And Israel and Iran are raining missiles at each other for the third consecutive day. First, let's take a look at all the developments that are coming in right this hour. The Israeli military says it is striking surface-to-surface missile sites in Iran. The Israel Defense Forces have claimed that several weapon production sites in Iran were struck as part of a wide-scale wave. Israeli military claim that these weapon production sites belong to the Quds Force, the IRGC, and the Iranian military in Tehran. Visuals show Iranian missiles striking the Israeli port city of Haifa. Iran is targeting Haifa city for the second consecutive day. Four people have been reportedly injured and several buildings have been damaged in Israel's Haifa due to Iranian missile attack. Meanwhile, Israel has launched a wave of airstrikes targeting Tehran and other Iranian cities. Iran's health ministry has said that 224 people have been killed since Israel's attack began on Friday. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has confirmed that the Iranian intelligence chief and his deputy have been killed in Israeli missile strikes. Netanyahu has said that Mohammad Kazemi, the head of the IRGC intelligence, and his deputy Hassan Mahakik were targeted in an Israeli Air Force strike. Iran has accused Israel of deliberately targeting a foreign ministry building in Tehran. Iran has also claimed that several civilians were injured in the attack. Iran's Majlis, or unicameral parliament, is considering withdrawal from the treaty on the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons in the wake of Israeli strikes on its nuclear facilities. Deputy Ruhollah Izzathak has said that the minimal necessary measure is withdrawal from the NPT. He said that we are currently considering the issue in Parliament and even withdrawal from the IAEA. To discuss more, we're now being joined by Professor James A. Russell, who is the Associate Professor in the Department of National Security Affairs at NPS, where he is teaching courses on U.S. foreign policy, military innovation, and national security strategy. He's joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
All right, let's just begin with this. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump says that there's a good chance that there will be a deal between Iran and Israel, but he said that sometimes they have to fight it out. What do you make of this statement?
I think this is as curious a statement as one could expect out of a senior political figure in the world. And it's not just, of course, any figure in the world. It's the President of the United States. For him to make such a statement, which basically tacitly endorses the Israeli approach to this, which is to keep the bombardment up. And I think it's a very strange thing to say, and shows, of course, the complete disinterest of the United States in trying to control the escalation in this violence, which is spreading. Now Prime Minister Netanyahu, for example, is suggesting that regime change may be one of the outcomes of the Israeli airstrikes. So you have a situation like this in which once the escalation dynamics of war kick in, the war creates all kinds of pressures on decision makers that you can't anticipate. for President Trump to come out with a statement like this is just pushing away from the table essentially and refusing to exercise any American leadership in the situation.
And also, it was, of course, America who wanted to get Iran on the table for the nuclear talks. However, Iran has just said that its parliament is considering withdrawal from the treaty on the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. How do you think will U.S. react to this?
I think this is a very predictable outcome to the events that were started off by Israel. One of the central objectives of American foreign policy in the post-World War II period has been to preserve as best it can the role of the Non-Proliferation Treaty in managing the spread of nuclear weapons. And it's been reasonably successful. It hasn't been perfect, of course, but it's been pretty successful. And the United States and the International Atomic Energy Agency and our European partners, of course, have worked hard to try and keep Iran in the Non-Proliferation Treaty system. And the IAEA, the Security Council's monitoring arm, just found the Iranians to be in non-compliance or with a whole variety of issues in the Iran program going back a couple of decades. And the point is that the United States was engaged in a process to try to get the Iranians more firmly on the reservation of the NPT, which is the accepted vehicle to stop the spread of nuclear weapons. And the Israelis have guaranteed, of course, that now is not going to happen. And I wouldn't blame anyone in Iran for thinking that the next step they need to take is to build their own weapons. And with the realization that if they had their own weapons, they wouldn't be getting pushed around like they are by the United States and Israel. So Israel is simply guaranteeing that the end result of this will be the result which they say they don't want. So it's a really a crazy kind of a situation, and one which reflects, I think, also a complete lack of strategic acumen on the part of the Israelis and the United States. We are both, sort of adrift in terms of the way we think about strategy and nuclear proliferation, the role of force, and it's a really sorry state of affairs to be witnessing like this, and it's immensely dangerous, of course, for all sorts of reasons.
Right, and so the Iranian foreign minister had earlier said that they might halt all actions if Israel does, but Israel seems adamant in crippling and dismantling Iran. Do you think it will be able to do so while defending itself, or will we see casualties on part of Israel as well?
One thing I think it's important to be clear of is that this is a war started by the Israelis, allegedly for the purpose of crippling Iran's nuclear infrastructure. And I'm here to tell you, and any serious proliferation expert around the world would tell you the same thing, is that the Iran nuclear program cannot be bombed out of existence, period. End story. It can't happen. This is a country of 90 million people. They have a human infrastructure. They have a source of fissile material. They have a long-range missile program. They have money. They have all the things that a proliferating state would need to build a weapon. And with the observation being, of course, is that despite having all these means at their disposal, which has been true for the last 75 odd years, they have not taken the steps to build a nuclear weapon. And yet, of course, Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu have repeatedly asserted, wrongly, of course, lying through his teeth, that Iran has been on the verge of having a nuclear weapon for the last 30 odd years. So this is, as I've said, insanity. I know of no other way to describe this. Insanity has taken hold of decision making in this circumstance, with no adult supervision anywhere. We have now it's the Turkish president who, he wants to be the responsible adult in the room, and exactly. Thankfully there are some, who want to step in and try to have cooler heads prevail, because the United States refuses to do it. Again, it's also a testament to America's reduced influence in the Middle East and the retreat, the devastating effects of the retreats from Iraq and Afghanistan after our military defeats there. It's all linked.
And then what, according to you, would be Israel's goal right now?
It's a mystery to me. As I said, accepting the fact that Iran's program can't be destroyed militarily. Israel lacks the capability to keep the barrage up, the incessant standoff barrage. And I might add that I would tell my students in the classroom this, and I would tell your viewers of this. No country has ever imposed its will on another state through air power alone, right? This is a pipe dream. This was a pipe dream of the air power theorists, and it's a pipe dream today. But it's a regrettable feature of political violence in the international system today that political leaders believe that standoff strikes and standoff bombardment can somehow impose their will on their enemies. And it's just a fantasy. There's never been a case in recent history where this has happened. And yet, and we in the United States believe this folly too. I mean, it's just, but the Israelis in particular, of course. I mean, as they're doing in Gaza, you know, what's the death toll now? Up to 50,000. They're slaughtering the Palestinians with standoff bombardment, and I don't know. It's just a terrible state of affairs.
And how would you assess the role of the international community? You mentioned Turkey, who wants to mediate. How about the West, like France and Germany and UK, as well as the Arab states?
No, this is absolutely the case. The silence out of the Arab League, as an example, is deafening. Where's Saudi Arabia? You know, they want to be a leader. Where's Egypt? You know. What about the Jordanians? What about the Emiratis, the Gulf states? They should be up in arms about this, demanding, and this, as I say, the silence is deafening. And it's also, I think, perhaps even more importantly, that represents a death knell of the Security Council. The United Nations Security Council is supposed to be the arbiter of international peace and security, and supposed to uphold the principles of the UN Charter, of course, and of course, the permanent members of the UN Security Council are supposed to play the leading role. It's the West, as you say, the whole sort of United Nations system was created by the West and the United States and Britain and France and so on and so forth. And again, the Security Council is completely irrelevant in this circumstance. It has shown itself to be a broken institution, in part because the main members of that institution, the Chinese, the Russians, the Americans, for example, have been shredding the international norms that the Security Council was supposed to be upholding. So what it essentially means is that, to make a bad metaphor based on popularized American history, it's the Wild Wild West. In other words, Israel can haul off and blast away at whoever it wants for however long it wants. There's no consequences to their actions. And don't think other countries in the region are realizing this, that the sort of foundations of international order, again, as enshrined in the UN Charter, for example, have been kicked out the door by the leading member of that council, which is the United States, who, you know, the president just has been quoted as saying, "Oh, let them fight it out for a while." It's absolute insanity. Yep.
And considering the escalation, do you think there is any way, diplomatically or any other way, where Iran and Israel can come to the table to at least for de-escalation?
I think what happens in these kinds of circumstances is that you have to remember one of the follies of air power theory and the idea, again, of imposing your will on your opponent through standoff bombardment, is that eventually reality sinks in, the ammunition supplies start running low, and there's this slow but sure dawn of realization that they're not going to be able to achieve their political objectives through bombing and long-range missiles. And when that sets in, then there's just the war sort of just grinds to a halt. This hasn't happened. For example, in the Ukraine, where the Russians and the Ukrainians are right at each other on the front lines every day, shooting at each other. In standoff bombardment, it's a different kind of an interaction, but one which, again, is also attritional in nature, in that sooner or later the ammo supplies are going to run low. The Israeli planes are going to, and their pilots are going to be worn out. They're going to run out of missiles, and so this is, the net result is that you end up, it becomes, again, a march of folly, firing off missiles to no strategic purpose, which is what's happening here. So the lessons here are, of course, that political leaders around the world, the impact that
All right, we sort of happen to have lost our guest, but that was definitely a message that now we do need some international community to interfere and de-escalate the situation. That was Professor James A. Russell, Associate Professor in Department of National Security Affairs at NPS.